I never thought the day I'd break would be the day I'd lose him forever. Those words echo in my mind every single morning when I wake up, and they're the last thing I hear before I fall asleep at night. My name is Margaret Ellen Crawford, and I'm 72 years old now. I've lived in this same house in Asheville, North Carolina, for the past 47 years, raised 3 children within these walls, buried a husband, and built what I thought was a life worth being proud of. But there's one thing I did, one choice I made when I was 63 years old, that changed everything. It shattered the one relationship that mattered most, and I've spent every day since then, living with that weight pressing down on my chest like a stone I can't move. I'm telling you this story today because I need you to understand something important. Sometimes the people who pressure us the most are the ones we love. And sometimes, in trying to keep everyone happy, we destroy the one person who never asked us for anything except to be seen, to be valued, to be loved without conditions. If you're watching this, I want you to know that what I'm about to share isn't easy for me. It's taken me 9 years to find the courage to speak these words out loud, to admit what I did, and how it cost me everything that truly mattered. But I'm sharing it because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to hear this before they make the same mistake I did. And listen, if this story touches something in you, if it makes you think about your own family or the choices you've had to make, I'd really appreciate it if you'd stick with me through to the end. Your support means more than you know. It helps stories like mine reach other people who might need to hear them. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Not to that terrible day when everything fell apart, but to the beginning, so you can understand how a mother could do what I did. I grew up in a small town called Marion, about 40 minutes east of Asheville, back in the 1950s. My daddy worked at the furniture factory, and my mama took in sewing to help make ends meet. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. We were what folks back then called respectable working class, which meant we had enough to eat, shoes on our feet, and went to church every Sunday whether we felt like it or not. My parents raised me and my 2 older brothers, Frank and Daniel, with one clear understanding. Family comes first, always. No matter what, you don't air your dirty laundry. You don't embarrass the family name. You stick together even when you don't want to, even when it hurts. That was the Crawford way, passed down from my grandparents who'd survived the Depression by pooling every resource and never, ever putting individual needs above the family unit. I learned early on that being a woman in our family meant being the peacekeeper. My mama taught me that a good woman smooths things over, keeps everyone happy, makes sure there's no conflict at the dinner table. She'd say, "Margaret Ellen, your job is to be the glue that holds this family together. That's what women do. We sacrifice our own comfort so everyone else can be at peace." I absorbed that lesson like a sponge soaking up water. By the time I was 16, I was already playing referee between my brothers, smoothing over arguments between my daddy and my uncles, making sure everyone felt heard and valued. Everyone except myself, that is. But I didn't realize that then. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do. In 1971, when I was 20 years old, I met Thomas Crawford at a church social. He was 25, worked as an electrician, and had just moved to Marion from Charlotte. He was handsome in that quiet, steady way. Dark hair always neatly combed, shirts always pressed, boots always polished. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. We courted for 8 months, got married in the spring of 1972, and moved to Asheville, where Thomas had been offered a position with a growing electrical company. We bought this house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a small front porch, and a backyard just big enough for a vegetable garden. In 1979, the same year our first child was born. That was Robert James Crawford, my eldest son, and from the very first moment I held him, I knew he was different. He was quiet, observant, gentle. He didn't cry much as a baby. He'd just watch everything with these serious, thoughtful eyes, taking it all in. 2 years later, in 1981, I had my second son, William. William was Thomas's pride and joy from day one. He came out screaming, demanding attention, and he never stopped. William was loud, charming, athletic, everything my husband had hoped for in a son. Thomas started teaching William how to throw a football before the boy could even walk properly. They were 2 peas in a pod, everyone said. Then in 1984, I had my daughter, Caroline. She was my only girl, and she was beautiful. Blonde curls, blue eyes, a smile that could melt your heart. She was also willful, stubborn, and knew exactly how to get what she wanted from her daddy. Thomas spoiled her rotten. Whatever Caroline wanted, Caroline got. And then there was Robert. Quiet, steady Robert, who never asked for anything, who did his homework without being told, who helped me with the dishes every night without complaint, who remembered everyone's birthdays and always had a kind word for his younger siblings, even when they were being brats. Robert was the easy child. That's what I told myself. He didn't need as much attention because he was so self-sufficient. He was mature for his age. He understood that his brother and sister needed me more. That's what I told myself for years, and I believed it because it made things easier. It made the guilt quieter. Thomas worked long hours, sometimes 60 or 70 hours a week during busy seasons. He provided well for us. We never wanted for anything material. But he wasn't around much. When he was home, his attention went to William and Caroline. William got taken to ball games and fishing trips. Caroline got taken to daddy-daughter dances and got driven to her friends' houses. Robert got overlooked. Not intentionally, I told myself. Just overlooked. I can still remember this one evening in particular. Robert must have been about 9 years old. He'd built this incredibly detailed model airplane, spent weeks on it, painted it perfectly. He brought it to the dinner table one night, so proud, wanting to show his father. Thomas glanced at it, said, "That's real nice, son," and then turned to William and spent the next 20 minutes talking about William's Little League game that afternoon. I watched Robert's face fall, watched him carefully set that airplane down, nod quietly, and go back to eating his dinner without another word. I should have said something. I should have made Thomas look at that airplane properly, should have made him see what Robert had accomplished. But I didn't. I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to cause tension at the table. Because keeping the peace was more important than standing up for my son. That was the first sign I remember clearly, though I'm sure there were others before it. The first moment when I chose the comfort of everyone else over the needs of the child who asked for so little. Our family settled into a rhythm over the years. Thomas worked. I kept the house and raised the children. William excelled at sports and was popular at school. Caroline was involved in cheerleading and drama club and always had a new boyfriend. And Robert. Robert got straight A's, worked part-time at the grocery store starting when he was 15, saved every penny, and never caused any trouble. My brothers Frank and Daniel both settled in Asheville, too, with their families. Frank had 4 kids. Daniel had 3. We'd all get together for Sunday dinners at my mama's house. She'd moved to Asheville after my daddy passed in 1986. Those gatherings were loud, chaotic, full of cousins running around and adults arguing about politics and football. Robert would usually end up in the corner with a book or helping my mama in the kitchen. "That boy's got the soul of an old man," my mama would say, and she meant it as a compliment. The pattern continued through Robert's teenage years. He graduated high school in 1997 with honors, got accepted to NC State University with a partial scholarship. He wanted to study engineering. I remember him showing me the acceptance letter, his face lit up with this rare, genuine smile. "I'm going to make you proud, Mama," he said. And he did. He worked 2 jobs while attending college, took out minimal student loans, graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering in 2001. He got hired by a manufacturing company in Raleigh and started building a good life for himself. He'd come home every few months to visit, always bringing gifts for everyone. Never anything expensive, just thoughtful things. A book he thought I'd like, a tool he knew his father needed, a scarf for Caroline, a baseball for William. William, meanwhile, had dropped out of community college after 1 semester and was living at home, working odd jobs, partying most weekends. Caroline had gone to a local college but dropped out after getting married to her high school sweetheart at age 20. The marriage lasted 8 months. By the time I turned 60 in 2012, here's how things stood. Robert was 33, living in Raleigh, doing well in his career. Never married, but dating occasionally. William was 31, still living at home, going through jobs like most people go through socks. Caroline was 28, divorced, living with us again with her 2 young children. My grandbabies, Emma and Jake. Thomas had retired from the electrical company with a decent pension. We were comfortable financially, but our house was crowded and chaotic with Caroline and the kids living there. William took up the entire basement. Robert had his old bedroom, but he was rarely there. That's when the pressure started building. Not all at once, but gradually, like water filling up a bathtub until it's right at the edge of overflowing. It started with money. It always starts with money, doesn't it? Caroline's ex-husband wasn't paying child support regularly. She was working part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, but it wasn't enough to cover childcare and her other expenses. She needed help. My baby girl needed help. And what kind of mother would I be if I didn't help her? Thomas and I started covering some of her expenses. Groceries, the kids' school supplies, new shoes when they outgrew the old ones. It added up fast. Our comfortable retirement budget started feeling tight. Then William's car broke down. Needed a new transmission. $1,500. He didn't have it. We paid for it. What else could we do? Let our son lose his job because he couldn't get to work. My brother Frank's business hit a rough patch. He'd opened a small contracting company and lost a major client. He was behind on his mortgage. He didn't ask directly, but my sister-in-law Linda mentioned it at Sunday dinner, and everyone looked at me and Thomas. Frank was family. Family helps family. We helped. We always helped. By 2014, when I was 62, we'd gone through a significant portion of our savings helping various family members. Thomas was getting stressed about money for the first time in our marriage. We'd never been wealthy, but we'd always been secure. Now that security was eroding. That's when someone, I can't even remember who, suggested that Robert should help out more. After all, he had a good job. He was single, no kids, no major expenses. Surely he could contribute to the family that had raised him, that had sacrificed for him. I remember the first time I brought it up to Robert. He'd come home for Thanksgiving in 2014. We were sitting at the kitchen table after everyone else had gone to bed, having coffee like we used to when he was younger. "Robert, honey," I started, stirring sugar into my cup even though I don't take sugar in my coffee. I was nervous, though I didn't want to admit why. "Your father and I have been having some financial stress lately, with Caroline and the kids living with us. and William needing help here and there, and your Uncle Frank going through a hard time. Things have been tight." Robert looked at me with those serious, thoughtful eyes. "How can I help, Mama?" Just like that. No hesitation. No questions about why William, who lived rent-free in our basement, couldn't contribute. No questions about why Caroline's ex-husband wasn't being held accountable. No questions about why Uncle Frank's financial problems were our responsibility. "How can I help, Mama?" My good, loyal son, always ready to do whatever was asked of him. "Well," I said, relief flooding through me, "if you could maybe send a little money each month, just to help offset things, whatever you can afford, it would really take some pressure off your father." "How much do you need?" he asked. I named a figure, $500 a month. Looking back now, I can barely breathe when I think about it. $500 a month from a young man who was trying to build his own life, save for his own future, maybe eventually buy a house and start a family of his own. But he just nodded. "Okay, Mama, I'll set up a transfer to start next month." He started sending the money in December 2014. Every month, never late, never complained. $500, regular as clockwork. And did it help? Sure, for a while. But here's the thing about family pressure and financial help. It's never enough. There's always another crisis, always another emergency, always another need. In the spring of 2015, William wrecked his car, totaled it. He needed another vehicle to get to work. Could Robert maybe help with that? Just this once, Robert sent $3,000 for a down payment on a used truck. Didn't even ask questions. That summer, Caroline's youngest, Jake, needed some medical procedures. The insurance didn't cover everything. Could Robert help with the medical bills? He sent $2,000. In the fall, my mama needed a new roof. She was on a fixed income. She was 86 years old. She'd done so much for all of us. Surely Robert could pitch in for his grandmother. He sent $4,000. His entire savings account, as I learned later. He'd been saving for a down payment on a house. He emptied it for my mama's roof. Did anyone thank him properly? Did we acknowledge what he was sacrificing? I can't say we did. It became expected. Robert helps. That's just what Robert does. And here's where it gets worse, where the signs started appearing that I should have paid attention to, but didn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Christmas 2015. Robert came home for the holidays. He looked tired, thinner than usual. He'd always been lean, but this was different. He looked worn down. I noticed, but didn't say anything. I was too busy managing Christmas dinner for 18 people. Making sure Caroline's kids had plenty of presents under the tree. Making sure William felt included even though he'd shown up drunk on Christmas Eve. Robert brought gifts for everyone. As always, nothing for himself under that tree. He spent Christmas morning watching everyone else open presents, smiling that quiet smile of his, and I didn't think anything of it. That was sign number 1, though I didn't recognize it then. The exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he'd lost, the fact that he'd bought gifts for everyone despite sending us thousands of dollars that year. Sign number 2 came in March 2016. Robert called to let me know he wouldn't be able to make it home for Easter. He had to work overtime, needed the extra money. I was disappointed, complained about it to Thomas and Caroline and William. Robert's not coming for Easter. Can you believe it? Too busy working. Nobody mentioned that he was probably working overtime because we'd bled him dry financially. Nobody mentioned that maybe he needed that overtime pay to rebuild the savings account he'd emptied for us. Sign number 3, June 2016. Robert's birthday. He turned 37. I called him to wish him happy birthday. He sounded flat, distant. I asked if he was okay and he said he was fine, just tired from work. I believed him because it was easier than asking follow-up questions. Sign number 4, August 2016. Thomas and I had to replace the HVAC system in our house. It was an emergency. The unit died during a heat wave and we had Caroline's kids to think about. We needed $6,000 we didn't have. Thomas suggested we ask Robert. I called him, explained the situation. I remember exactly how the conversation went. "Robert, honey, I hate to ask, but our air conditioning died, and with the babies in the house. How much do you need, Mama?" He didn't even let me finish. $6,000 for a new unit. There was a pause, the longest pause we'd ever had in a conversation. I counted the seconds in my head. 5, 10, 15. "Mama," he finally said, and his voice sounded different, strained. "I don't have $6,000 right now. I've been helping out every month, and the Christmas money, and Uncle Frank, and Grandma's roof, and William's car, and Caroline's medical bills. I don't have $6,000. And do you know what I said? Do you know what came out of my mouth? Robert, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. Your father worked himself to the bone to provide for this family. And now, when we need you, when your family needs you, you're going to say no." I can still hear those words echoing in my head, still feel the shame burning in my chest when I remember them. There was another long pause. Then Robert said very quietly, "I'll figure something out, Mama." He sent the money. I found out later he'd taken out a personal loan to do it, went into debt for our air conditioning. That was sign number 4, his hesitation, his attempt to set a boundary, and my response, guilting him, manipulating him, weaponizing everything we'd ever done for him as parents, as if love and care are debts to be repaid. Sign number 5, October 2016. Robert didn't come home for Thanksgiving that year. Said he had to work. When I called him on Thanksgiving Day, he answered, but kept the conversation short. Said he was tired, needed to go. I complained about it to the family. Robert couldn't even take time to come home for Thanksgiving. Too busy with work, apparently, after everything we've done for him. My brother Daniel's wife, Patricia, said something that should have made me stop and think. "Margaret, do you ever wonder why Robert's always so busy? Why he never seems to have time for family anymore?" I brushed her off, made excuses. Robert was building his career. Robert was focused on work. Robert was just... Robert, sign number 6, January 2017. William got fired from his job. Again. 5th job in 3 years. He was furious, ranting about how his boss was unfair, how nobody appreciated him. He needed money to cover his expenses while he looked for something new. Thomas and I didn't have it. Our savings were depleted. The retirement account was lower than it had ever been. "Call Robert," Caroline said. She said it so casually, like Robert was a bank we could just withdraw from whenever we needed. "We can't keep asking Robert for money," I said. But even as I said it, I knew I would. Because what else could I do? Let William struggle? Let my son go without? I called Robert, asked if he could help William out for a couple of months, just until William found something new. "Mama," Robert said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before, something that scared me. "I can't. I'm barely keeping my head above water as it is. I've been sending you $500 every month for over 2 years. I've sent thousands more for emergencies. I took out a loan for your HVAC. I'm behind on my own bills. I can't help William." "But he's your brother," I said. "And I'm your son," Robert replied. "Does that matter at all?" I didn't know what to say to that. The question hung in the air between us like smoke. "I have to go, Mama," Robert said finally. "I'm sorry I can't help this time." He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling something I couldn't quite name. It might have been shame. It might have been anger. It might have been the first tiny crack in the wall I'd built around my conscience. But that crack sealed up fast because William needed help and Robert had said no. My son had said no to family. That's how I framed it to myself. That's how I told the story to Thomas and Caroline and my brothers. "Robert said no," I told them. "Said he can't help William." The reaction was immediate and ugly. Thomas was furious. "After everything we've done for that boy, after we paid for his college, after we raised him right, he can't help his own brother?" Caroline was hurt. "I can't believe Robert would be so selfish. He knows how hard things have been for all of us." My brothers started making comments at Sunday dinners. "Robert's gotten too big for his britches, hasn't he? Made something of himself and forgot where he came from." And I let them say those things. I didn't defend him. Didn't remind them of the thousands of dollars he'd sent. Didn't mention that he'd been supporting us financially for over 2 years with no complaint. I let them paint him as selfish, as ungrateful, as someone who'd abandoned his family. That was sign number 6. Robert setting a boundary, and the family turning on him for it. Sign number 7. March 2017. Robert's birthday again. He turned 38. I called to wish him happy birthday. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. He didn't call back. I tried again the next day. Voicemail. On the 3rd day, he answered. "Hi, Mama. Robert, honey. I've been trying to reach you. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I've just been busy." His voice was cold, distant, like talking to a stranger. "Well, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Are you coming home to visit soon?" "Probably not for a while, Mama. Work's really busy." "Robert, is something wrong? You sound different." There was a pause. Then he said, "Do you know what I did for my birthday, Mama? I sat in my apartment alone because I couldn't afford to go out. Couldn't afford to buy myself a birthday dinner because I'm behind on my electric bill, because I've been sending you money for 2.5 years. I'm 38 years old, and I'm broke. I'm broke because I kept helping everyone else, and nobody ever thought to ask if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I could afford what you were asking me for." My heart stopped. "Robert, I didn't know." "You didn't ask, Mama. You never asked. None of you did. You just took and expected me to keep giving. And when I finally said I couldn't anymore, I became the bad guy. I became selfish, the ungrateful son who forgot his family. That's not—" "I have to go. I'll talk to you later." He hung up. I sat there with tears running down my face, my hands shaking. That phone pressed to my ear even though the line was dead. And some part of me knew. Some part of me understood that I'd broken something that couldn't be easily fixed. That I'd taken my good, loyal, selfless son, and I'd used him up until there was nothing left. But I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. So I pushed it down, sealed it up, told myself Robert was just stressed. He'd cool off. He'd come around. Family forgives. Family always forgives. That was sign number 7. Robert telling me the truth, and me refusing to really hear it. Sign number 8. And this was the last one before everything fell apart. Summer 2017. My mama got sick. Really sick. Congestive heart failure. She was 88 years old and the doctor said she didn't have much time left. I called all my children to let them know. Caroline came to the hospital immediately. William showed up eventually, hung around for an hour, then left. And Robert? Robert didn't come. I called him 3 times. He didn't answer. Finally, I left a message. "Robert, your grandmother is dying. She's in the hospital and she's asking for you. I need you to come home." He called back 6 hours later. "I can't, Mama. I can't afford the time off work, and I can't afford the gas to drive there. I'm sorry. Tell Grandma I love her." I was so angry. Angrier than I'd ever been at him. My mama was dying, and my son couldn't be bothered to come say goodbye. What kind of person does that? I told the family. Told them Robert wasn't coming. Told them he said he couldn't afford it. The reaction was worse than before. Thomas called Robert himself, left a scathing voicemail about duty and respect and family obligations. Caroline cried and said Robert had always been Grandma's favorite. How could he do this to her? My brother started saying maybe Robert wasn't really a Crawford at all, if he could abandon family like this. And I agreed with them. I let my anger overrule my memory. Forgot about the thousands of dollars he'd sent us. Forgot about him emptying his savings account for Grandma's roof. Forgot about the personal loan he'd taken out for our air conditioning. I forgot all of it in my rage and hurt. Mama died 3 days later. Robert didn't make it to the funeral either. That was sign number 8. The moment when Robert was drowning, financially and emotionally, crying out for understanding, and we all condemned him for not swimming to shore to save us instead. And none of us, not one single person in that family, stopped to ask ourselves why Robert, who had always shown up, always helped, always been there, was suddenly absent. We just decided he'd changed, decided he'd become someone we didn't recognize, someone selfish and cold. We decided this without ever considering that maybe we were the ones who'd changed, that maybe we'd become people who took and took until there was nothing left to give. After Mama's funeral, the family pressure reached a breaking point. Everyone was angry at Robert. Everyone had something to say about his absence, his selfishness, his betrayal of the family. And I was caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace like I'd always done, trying to smooth things over, trying to make everyone happy. But I couldn't make everyone happy. Robert on one side, the rest of the family on the other. I couldn't keep both sides satisfied. I should have chosen Robert. Looking back now, with 9 years of hindsight and regret, I know I should have chosen my loyal, good son who'd been asking for nothing but giving everything. But I didn't. I chose the other side. And that choice, that one terrible choice, led to the day I broke, the day I lost him forever. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to thank you. I know this is heavy, and I appreciate you staying with me. If this is resonating with you, if you've experienced family pressure or complicated dynamics like this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you haven't already, hitting that like button really helps share this story with others who might need to hear it. Now, let me tell you about the worst decision I ever made. It happened in September 2017, about 6 weeks after Mama's funeral. The family was still raw, still angry. Sunday dinners at my house had become tense affairs where everyone complained about Robert and I didn't defend him. Caroline was struggling more than ever. Her ex-husband had completely stopped paying child support and had moved to another state. She was working 2 part-time jobs and barely making ends meet. Emma needed braces. Jake needed new shoes and school supplies. Caroline needed a car repair she couldn't afford. She came to me crying one evening. My baby girl, sobbing in my kitchen about how she didn't know what she was going to do, how she felt like she was failing her children. "I don't understand why Robert won't help," she said through her tears. "He has a good job. He's single. He doesn't have kids to support. Why won't he help his own niece and nephew?" I tried to explain, weakly, that Robert had been helping for a long time, that maybe he couldn't afford it anymore. "He didn't even come to Grandma's funeral, Mama. He didn't come because he claimed he couldn't afford it. But he has money for a nice apartment in Raleigh. He has money for his own life, but not for family. That's not the brother I grew up with. That's not the son you raised." Thomas was there too. He'd been getting more and more bitter about Robert over the weeks. "That boy owes this family," he said. "We raised him right, put a roof over his head, paid for his college, and now he can't even help his own sister and her kids. It's disgraceful," William chimed in from the living room. "Robert always thought he was better than the rest of us, going off to his fancy engineering job, living in the city. He forgot where he came from. My brother Frank had opinions too. At that Sunday's dinner, he'd said, 'Robert's got responsibilities to this family. Your mama just died. And where was he? Not here. Too busy or too cheap to show up. It's shameful, Margaret. You raised him better than that.' The pressure built and built and built. Every conversation turned into a discussion about Robert, about what he should be doing, about what he owed, about how he'd changed, about how disappointed everyone was. And I was tired. I was 63 years old, and I was exhausted from trying to manage everyone's feelings, everyone's needs, everyone's disappointments. So I made a decision, a terrible, horrible decision that I will regret for the rest of my life. I decided to call a family meeting, to confront Robert about his behavior, to make him understand his responsibilities to the family, to make him see how he was hurting people. I called Robert in early September, told him we needed to talk, told him the family had some concerns and we all needed to sit down together and discuss them. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Mama, what is this about?" "It's about family, Robert. It's about responsibility and showing up for the people who love you." Another silence. "You want me to come home so you can all gang up on me about Grandma's funeral." "It's not about ganging up, honey. We just need to talk, to clear the air. Things have been strained and we need to work through it as a family." "Mama, I can't afford to take time off work right now. I've got bills I'm behind on. I'm trying to get my finances back on track after..." "After what, Robert? After we asked you for help? Is that what you were going to say?" I heard him take a breath. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is you abandoning your family when we need you most. Your sister is struggling. Your niece and nephew need things. Your grandmother died and you couldn't even be bothered to show up." "Mama, I explained. I need you to come home next weekend. We're going to sit down, all of us, and we're going to talk about this. You owe us that much." There was a very long pause. Then, quietly, "Okay, Mama. I'll be there." He sounded defeated, resigned, like he knew what was coming and couldn't see a way out of it. I should have heard that in his voice, should have recognized it for what it was, should have called the whole thing off right then. But I didn't. I was too focused on keeping everyone else happy, on fixing the family tension, on making things right. The weekend came. September 23rd, 2017, a Saturday afternoon. I'll never forget that date as long as I live. Robert drove up from Raleigh, arrived at 1 o'clock, right on time like always. He looked terrible. He'd lost more weight, had dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were looser than they should have been. He looked like a man who was struggling, who was barely holding on. But I was too caught up in my own agenda to really see it, too focused on what I needed to say, on what the family needed to address. Everyone was there. Thomas, Caroline with the kids, William, my brothers Frank and Daniel with their wives. We'd gathered in my living room like some kind of tribunal. Robert walked in, saw everyone sitting there waiting for him, and I watched his face close off, watched him shut down emotionally, pull up walls I'd never seen him build before. "Hi, everyone," he said quietly. The responses were cold. A few nods. Caroline didn't even look at him. "Robert, sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair we'd left empty for him. It was positioned in the center of the room, with everyone else forming a semicircle around it. He sat, looked at me with those serious, thoughtful eyes that had always seen so much. "What's this about, Mama?" he asked. I took a breath. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward. The moment I thought I was doing the right thing. "Robert, we need to talk about your behavior lately. About your absence from family events. About your refusal to help when your sister needs you. About you not coming to your grandmother's funeral." I watched something flicker across his face. Pain, maybe. Or resignation. "I explained about the funeral, Mama. I explained about the money. I don't understand what else you want me to say." Thomas spoke up then, his voice hard. "We want you to explain why you think you're too good for this family now. Why you can't be bothered to show up. Why you can't help your own sister." "I don't think I'm too good for anyone," Robert said carefully. "I've been struggling financially. I've been trying to explain that for months now, but nobody wants to hear it." Caroline jumped in, her voice sharp with anger. "You've been struggling? Really, Robert? You've been struggling? I'm raising 2 kids alone. I'm working 2 jobs. I can barely afford groceries. And you're telling me you're struggling?" "I sent you money for your medical bills," Robert said quietly. "That was over a year ago," Caroline interrupted. "What have you done lately? Where were you when Grandma died? Where are you when I need help with the kids?" My brother Frank leaned forward. "Your mother and father raised you, Robert. They sacrificed for you, put you through school. And now, when they need you, when your family needs you, you turn your back." I watched Robert's hands grip the arms of the chair, watched his knuckles turn white. "I haven't turned my back," he said, and his voice was strained. "I've been sending money for over 2 years. I've helped with cars and medical bills and roofs and air conditioning and then you stopped," William cut in. "You decided you were done helping, decided your money was more important than family." "I didn't decide anything." Robert's voice rose for the first time. "I ran out. I ran out of money. I emptied my savings. I took out loans. I got behind on my own bills. I've been trying to tell you this, trying to explain, but none of you want to listen." The room went silent. Robert was breathing hard, emotion cracking through his usually calm exterior. "I can't keep giving what I don't have," he said, and his voice broke. "I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. I'm drowning. I've been drowning for months. And instead of throwing me a line, you're all standing on the shore, telling me I'm not swimming hard enough." The silence stretched out. This was the moment when I should have stopped, should have really heard what my son was saying, should have seen the desperation in his eyes, the exhaustion in his posture, the way he was literally begging us to understand. But Caroline started crying. My baby girl, crying about how hard her life was, how much she needed help, how she couldn't believe her own brother would abandon her and her children, And Thomas was looking at me, waiting for me to say something, to fix this, to make Robert see reason. And my brothers were watching, waiting to see if I would stand with the family or stand with the son who'd let us all down, all that pressure, all those eyes on me, all those expectations. I opened my mouth, and I chose wrong. "Robert," I said, and my voice was firm, harder than I'd ever used with him before. "You're being selfish. I'm sorry if that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. Family takes care of family. That's how we were raised. That's the Crawford way. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you right now." I watched those words hit him like a physical blow, watched him flinch, watched his face go pale. "When you were growing up," I continued, because once I'd started, I couldn't seem to stop. "We never asked you for anything. We provided everything you needed. We supported you. And now that we need support, you can't be bothered. You have a good job, a nice apartment, no responsibilities. Your sister has children to feed. Your father and I are trying to help her, because that's what parents do. That's what family does. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Because you've always been so focused on yourself." The words kept coming, like poison I'd been holding and finally spilling out. Words shaped by weeks of pressure from everyone else. Words that weren't really mine, but that I spoke anyway. You didn't come to your grandmother's funeral. Your grandmother who loved you, who always defended you, who helped pay for that roof over your head and those clothes on your back when you were growing up. And you couldn't even be bothered to say goodbye to her because you claimed you couldn't afford the gas money. What kind of person does that? Robert was staring at me, just staring, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You need to decide, Robert, what kind of man you're going to be. Are you going to be a man who honors his family, who helps when he's needed? Or are you going to be someone who turns his back on the people who raised him?" My brother Frank nodded approvingly. Thomas had his arms crossed, looking satisfied. Caroline was wiping her eyes, looking vindicated. And Robert just sat there in that chair, surrounded by his family, and I watched something break inside him. Watched it happen in real time, like a glass shattering, but in slow motion. He stood up slowly. His movements were careful, controlled, like he was trying very hard to hold himself together. "Mama," he said, and his voice was so quiet I almost couldn't hear him. "I came here today because you asked me to. Because you're my mother, and I love you. I drove 3 hours on gas money I couldn't afford to spend because you said family needed to talk." He looked around the room at everyone. At his father, who'd never really seen him. At his sister, who'd never said thank you. At his brother, who'd never paid back a dime. At his uncles, who'd taken his money without a second thought. "I've given this family everything I had," he said. "Money I needed for my own bills, savings I'd put away for my future, time I should have spent building my own life. I did it because I love you, because you asked, because I thought that's what family meant." He turned back to me. "But I just realized something, Mama. Family is supposed to go both ways. Family's supposed to care about each other, actually care, not just care about what they can get from each other." "Robert," I started. He held up his hand. "I'm not finished. In the last 2.5 years, do you know how many times anyone in this room asked me how I was doing? Asked me if I was okay? Asked me if I needed anything? Not once, not one single time. You all just assumed I was fine because I have a job and I'm single and I don't have kids. But I'm not fine, Mama. I haven't been fine for a long time." Tears were running down his face now. My son, who never cried, was crying. "I came to Grandma's funeral." he said. "Did you know that? I drove up here. I'd borrowed money from a coworker to put gas in my car. I got here the morning of the funeral, and I sat in that parking lot at the church for 30 minutes, listening to everyone inside talk about what a terrible person I was for not being there, listening to you tell people I couldn't be bothered to show up, listening to Uncle Frank say maybe I wasn't really a Crawford after all." My hand went to my mouth. "Robert, you were there?" "I was there, and I sat in that car, and I realized that if I walked in, nothing would change. You'd all still think the worst of me. You'd all still only see me as someone who was supposed to give and give and give until there was nothing left. So I drove home. I went back to Raleigh, and I cried for 3 days because my grandmother died, and I couldn't even go to her funeral because her family had decided I wasn't worth defending." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "You want to know what kind of man I'm going to be, Mama? I'm going to be the kind of man who knows his worth, who knows that love shouldn't leave you broken and empty. I'm going to be the kind of man who sets boundaries, even when it's hard, even when people call him selfish, even when his own mother says his grandmother would be ashamed of him." He picked up his keys from the table where he'd set them. "I love you, Mama. I love all of you. But I can't do this anymore. I can't keep sacrificing myself on the altar of family obligation while none of you even see me as a person. I'm done." "Robert, wait!" I stepped toward him, suddenly panicked, suddenly realizing that something irrevocable was happening. "I'm done," he repeated. "Don't call me asking for money. Don't call me asking for favors. Don't call me at all, unless you're ready to actually see me, actually care about me, actually treat me like I matter for more than just what I can provide." He walked toward the door. I followed him. "Robert, please, don't leave like this. We can talk about this. We can work it out." He turned at the door, looked at me with eyes full of pain and disappointment, and something that looked like pity. "Mama, you had a choice today. You could have chosen to hear me, to defend me, to stand up for me against everyone else. But you didn't. You chose them. You chose keeping the peace over protecting your son. That tells me everything I need to know." "That's not fair," I said, crying now too. I was trying to help everyone, trying to make things right for the whole family. "You have 3 children, Mama, but you've only ever really seen 2 of them. I've always been invisible to you, unless you needed something from me. And today, you made that crystal clear." He opened the door. "Robert, please." "Goodbye, Mama. I hope someday you figure out that family isn't about who you can use. It's about who you choose to love, without conditions." He walked out, got in his car, drove away. I stood in that doorway watching his taillights disappear down the street, and something in my chest felt like it was caving in. I went back inside. The family was quiet. "He'll cool off," Thomas said. "Give him a few days." "Good riddance," William muttered. "We don't need someone like that in this family anyway." Caroline was crying again, but this time it felt different. She looked stricken. "Mama, did we really just?" She couldn't finish the sentence. My brother Frank was shaking his head. "Robert always was too sensitive. Takes things too personal. He'll come around." But I knew. Standing there in my living room surrounded by my family, I knew. He wouldn't come around. I'd lost him. Really lost him. And it was my fault. I'd chosen wrong. I'd chosen the pressure of everyone else over the quiet, loyal, good son who'd never asked me for anything except to be seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, kept seeing Robert's face when I said his grandmother would be ashamed of him, kept hearing his voice break when he said he'd been drowning, and we'd all just stood on the shore watching. At 3 a.m, I got up and went to his old bedroom. It was still set up the way it had been when he was in high school. Books on the shelves, his old model airplanes on the dresser, pictures on the wall. I looked at those pictures. Robert at his high school graduation, standing alone because Thomas had been off taking pictures of William at his baseball game. Robert at his college graduation. No family there because Caroline had a cheerleading competition that same day. Robert at Christmas, always in the background of the photos, always watching everyone else, always smiling that quiet smile, always invisible, always overlooked, always expected to understand, to be patient, to wait his turn for attention that never came. And when we'd finally paid attention to him, it was only to take, to demand, to pressure, to guilt. I sat on his bed in that dark room, and I cried harder than I'd cried in my entire life, because I knew what I'd done. I knew I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. The days after that confrontation were strange and hollow. I kept expecting Robert to call. Kept thinking he'd cool off and reach out like he always had before when there was family tension. But he didn't call. A week went by, then 2, then a month. I tried calling him 3 times that first week. The calls went straight to voicemail. I left messages. "Robert, honey, please call me back. We need to talk. I'm worried about you." No response. I tried texting. "I love you. Please don't shut me out." The messages showed as delivered but never read. Thomas said to give him space. "He's being stubborn. He'll come around when he needs something." But the thing was, Robert never needed anything. That was the whole problem. He'd needed support and understanding and someone to see how he was struggling, and we'd given him demands and guilt instead. October passed. November came. Thanksgiving arrived, and for the first time in 38 years, Robert wasn't at our family table. Caroline kept looking at the empty chair. "This doesn't feel right," she said quietly. "Mama, maybe we should try to call him again." I had tried. I'd called that morning and left a message. "Robert, it's Thanksgiving. Please come home, or at least call and let me know you're okay." He didn't call. Christmas was worse. I bought presents for him anyway, wrapped them, put them under the tree. Some desperate part of me thought maybe he'd show up. Maybe Christmas would bring him home. It didn't. On Christmas morning, I sat there looking at those wrapped presents that would never be opened, and Caroline started crying. Real crying. Not the manipulative tears from before. "What did we do?" she asked. "Mama, what did we do to him?" William was defensive. "We didn't do anything. He's the one who chose to leave. He's the one being stubborn." But even Thomas looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we were too hard on him," he said quietly. Too hard on him. That was the understatement of the century. In January, I tried a different approach. I wrote Robert a letter, a real letter, on paper, sent to his apartment in Raleigh. "Dear Robert," I wrote, "I miss you. I know you're angry with me, with all of us, and maybe you have a right to be. I want to talk. I want to understand. Please call me. Love, Mama." The letter came back 2 weeks later. "Return to sender. No longer at this address." He'd moved. My son had moved and hadn't told me. Didn't want me to know where he was. That's when the real panic set in. That's when I truly understood that this wasn't Robert being stubborn or taking a break from the family. This was Robert cutting ties, protecting himself, removing himself from our lives completely. I tried to find him, Called his workplace. They said he no longer worked there. He'd resigned in October. Resigned, started over somewhere, created a new life that didn't include us. I reached out to his few friends I knew about. None of them would tell me where he was. One of them, a guy named Marcus, who'd known Robert since college, told me, "Mrs. Crawford, Robert asked me not to give you his information. He said he needs to heal. He said being in contact with your family was destroying him. I have to respect his wishes." "But I am his mother," I said. "Yes, ma'am, you are. And that's why this is so hard for him. But it's what he needs right now." He hung up. I stood there with that phone in my hand, understanding fully for the first time what I'd done. I'd driven my son away so completely that he'd changed his entire life just to get away from us. The months dragged on. February, March, April. No word from Robert, no sign of him. The family started to fracture. Caroline was dealing with guilt. She'd come to me crying more than once, saying, "Mama, I keep thinking about all the times Robert helped me, and I never even said thank you. I just expected it. I demanded more." Thomas was quieter than usual, withdrawn. One night in bed, he said to me, "I failed that boy, didn't I? I was so focused on William being the son I thought I wanted that I never saw the son I actually had. William was the only one who maintained his anger at Robert. He abandoned us," he'd say. "Good riddance." But even William's anger felt hollow, like he knew he was wrong but couldn't admit it. My brothers stopped coming to Sunday dinners. The whole family dynamic had shifted. The center couldn't hold without Robert's steady, quiet presence that I'd never appreciated until it was gone. I started seeing a therapist in May 2018. I'd never been to therapy before. Didn't really believe in it, if I'm honest. But I was desperate. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Kept replaying that day over and over in my mind. The therapist's name was Dr. Sarah Chen. She was in her 40s, calm, with kind eyes that reminded me a little of Robert's. I told her everything. The whole story, the money, the pressure, the family meeting, Robert's words, how he'd left and I couldn't find him. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Margaret, why do you think Robert left?" "Because we hurt him," I said. "Because we took advantage of him." "That's part of it," she agreed. "But why did Robert let you take advantage of him for so long?" I didn't understand the question. "Robert is an adult," Dr. Chen said gently. "He could have said no at any point, could have set boundaries earlier, but he didn't. Why? Because he loved us?" "Yes. And what did he want in return for that love?" "Money," I said, confused. "No. Robert never asked you for money, did he? What did he want? What did he ask for?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "He asked to be seen," I said slowly. "He said nobody ever asked how he was. Nobody ever cared if he was okay." "He wanted to matter," Dr. Chen said. "He wanted to be valued for who he was, not what he could provide. And when he realized that wasn't going to happen, when you made it clear that his worth to the family was purely transactional, he left, not because he stopped loving you, but because staying was killing him." I started crying. "How do I fix this?" "Can I ask you something, Margaret? Do you want to fix this for Robert's sake or for yours?" "What do you mean?" "Are you missing Robert because you genuinely want him to be happy and healthy, even if that means he's not in your life? Or are you missing him because his absence is making you uncomfortable?" I couldn't answer that. Didn't know how to answer it. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Here's what I want you to think about. Robert is somewhere right now, living a life you're not part of. Maybe he's happy. Maybe he's healing. Maybe he's building relationships with people who value him for who he is. If that's true, if Robert's better off without you in his life, can you accept that? Can you want that for him, even though it hurts you? Could I? Could I want my son to be happy even if it meant losing him forever? I didn't know. I wasn't sure. We spent months working on that question. Months unpacking my relationship with Robert, with all my children, with my own parents and how they'd raised me to be the peacekeeper, the one who sacrifices her own needs for everyone else's comfort. Dr. Chen helped me see patterns I'd never recognized before. How I'd always prioritize the loudest voices, the biggest needs, because those were the ones that created the most immediate pressure. How I'd taken Robert for granted because he was quiet, self-sufficient, didn't make demands. We teach people how to treat us, Dr. Chen said. But we also teach people that we don't matter by how we treat ourselves. Robert learned from you that his needs should come last, that asking for help or attention was selfish, and he internalized that lesson so deeply that even when he was drowning, he felt guilty for speaking up about it. She was right. I taught him that. Not intentionally, but I taught him nonetheless. Through therapy, I started making changes, small ones at first. I started setting boundaries with Caroline and William, stopped letting them rely on me financially, without any effort on their own parts. It was hard. They pushed back. Caroline cried. William got angry, but I held firm. For the first time in my life, I said no and meant it. I had difficult conversations with Thomas about our parenting, about how we'd failed Robert, about how we'd prioritized what we wanted our children to be over who they actually were. Those conversations were painful. Thomas didn't want to admit his role in it, didn't want to acknowledge that his favoritism of William had damaged Robert. But slowly, over time, he started to see it, started to own it. In the fall of 2018, a year after Robert left, I wrote him another letter. I didn't know where to send it, so I sent it to Marcus, Robert's friend, with a note asking him to forward it if Robert was willing to receive it. This is what I wrote. Dear Robert, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't even know if Marcus will give it to you. But I need to say these things, even if you never see them. You were right about all of it. We used you. I used you. I took your quiet, generous nature and I exploited it. I let everyone else exploit it. I told myself you were fine, because you never complained, but the truth is, I never asked because I didn't want to know. Didn't want to see. Didn't want to face my own failures as a mother. You deserved better. You deserved parents who saw you, who valued you for who you are, not what you could give. You deserved a mother who stood up for you when everyone else was tearing you down. You deserved siblings who appreciated your sacrifices instead of demanding more. I failed you. There's no excuse for it, no way to make it right. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I made, trying to change the patterns that led me to hurt you so badly. I'm not telling you this because I want credit. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that I finally see what I did. I finally understand. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to respond. You owe me nothing. You've already given this family more than we had any right to ask for. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. And I want you to know that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you're happy. I hope you're building a life that brings you joy. I hope you're surrounded by people who value you the way you deserve to be valued. I love you. I always have, even though I did a terrible job of showing it. And I'm proud of you. Not for the money you sent or the problems you solved. I'm proud of you for having the strength to walk away, for knowing your worth, for choosing yourself when no one else would choose you. Be happy, my son. That's all I want for you now. Love always, Mama." I gave that letter to Marcus in October 2018. He said he'd pass it along, but couldn't guarantee Robert would read it. I never got a response. Years passed. 2019, 2020, 2021. The world changed. Pandemic, lockdowns, so much fear and uncertainty. Through it all, I wondered where Robert was. If he was safe, if he was healthy, if he'd found happiness. I celebrated his 40th birthday alone in 2019, sitting in his old room with a cupcake and a candle, singing happy birthday to a son who wasn't there. Caroline had her own revelations during those years. She went to therapy too, started dealing with her own issues. She wrote her own letter to Robert, sent it through Marcus. Never got a response either. William didn't change much. He eventually moved out, got married to a woman who didn't put up with his nonsense, got his act together a bit. But he never acknowledged what we'd done to Robert. Thomas's health started declining in 2020. Nothing major, just the wear and tear of age. He talked about Robert sometimes. "I wish I could tell him I'm sorry," he'd say. "I wish I'd been a better father to him." "You still could," I'd tell him. "We could try to find him." But we never did. Respected Robert's need for distance, even though it hurt. My brothers Frank and Daniel both reached out to Marcus at different times, asking if Robert would accept letters from them. Marcus said Robert wasn't ready for contact with any family members. That hurt. But I understood it. We'd all hurt him, not just me, all of us. In 2022, I turned 70. My children threw me a birthday party. Caroline and her kids, William and his wife, some friends from church, my brothers and their families. But there was an empty space at that table, a space that ached. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Thomas found me crying in the kitchen. "Still thinking about Robert?" he asked. I nodded. "Me too," he said. "Every day, I see something and think, Robert would like this. Or, I should tell Robert about this. And then I remember he's not there. That we drove him away." "Do you think he's happy?" I asked. Thomas was quiet for a long time. "I hope so," he finally said. "I really hope so. Because if we destroyed him, if he's out there somewhere still hurting because of what we did, I don't think I could live with that. We have to live with it either way," I said. "We have to live with what we did. Whether he's happy or not, we still did it." In 2023, Marcus reached out to me. Just a brief email. "Mrs. Crawford, I thought you should know that Robert is doing well. He's happy. He's built a good life for himself. He asked me to tell you that he's okay, and that you don't need to worry about him anymore. He also asked me to tell you that he's forgiven you, but he's not ready for contact. Maybe someday, but not now." I read that email probably 100 times, cried over it more times than I could count. He'd forgiven me. My son had forgiven me. But he still didn't want contact, still needed to protect himself from us. That forgiveness was a gift, an undeserved gift. But it was also a boundary. He was telling me that he'd done the work, to heal, to let go of the anger, but that didn't mean he was ready to let us back into his life. I had to accept that. Had to accept that I might never see my son again, might never hear his voice, might never get to tell him to his face how sorry I was, how much I loved him, how proud I was of the man he'd become in spite of us. It's 2026 now. I'm 72 years old. Thomas is 77. Our health isn't what it used to be. Caroline is 42, working as a dental hygienist, raising her kids who are teenagers now. William is 45, still married, working a steady job for the first time in his life. And Robert is 47. I know this only because Marcus occasionally sends brief updates. He's doing well. He's healthy. He's happy. That's all I get. And I've learned to be grateful for it. Because the alternative, not knowing if he was alive or dead, healthy or sick, happy or miserable, that would be unbearable. I've spent 9 years living with the consequences of my choices. 9 years understanding that loving someone doesn't mean you have the right to them. That being someone's mother doesn't mean they owe you access to their life. I've learned that family isn't about obligation. It's not about who owes who what. It's not about keeping score or demanding loyalty. Real family is about seeing each other, valuing each other, supporting each other in ways that don't destroy anyone in the process. I've learned that keeping the peace isn't the same as keeping the love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is cause some discomfort by standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. I've learned that children aren't supposed to sacrifice themselves for their parents' comfort. That's not how it's supposed to work. We sacrifice for them. We protect them. We build them up and send them out into the world, strong and whole. I didn't do that for Robert. I took a strong, whole person, and I let him be broken down piece by piece, until he had to run just to survive. And now I live with that, every single day. So why am I telling you this story? Why am I sitting here, a 72-year-old woman, confessing my worst failure to strangers on the internet? Because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe there's a mother somewhere who's doing what I did, taking the quiet child for granted, assuming they're fine because they don't complain, using their generosity until there's nothing left. Maybe there's a family somewhere that's putting pressure on one member to hold everyone else up, not realizing they're crushing that person under the weight. Maybe there's a Robert out there, a quiet, generous, loyal person who's being used up by people who claim to love them, and they need to hear that it's okay to walk away, that they're not selfish for setting boundaries, that they deserve to be seen and valued for who they are, not what they can provide. Or maybe there's someone who's already lost their Robert, who's already driven away someone they loved because they chose pressure over protection, chose keeping the peace over doing what's right. If that's you, I want you to know, you can't undo it. You can't go back and make different choices. The damage is done. But you can change. You can learn. You can make sure you never make that mistake again with anyone else. You can respect the boundaries of the person you hurt. You can do the work to understand why you made those choices. You can forgive yourself while also holding yourself accountable. And you can hope, you can pray that somewhere out there, the person you hurt is healing, is happy, is building a life that doesn't include you, but that brings them joy anyway. That's all I have now. Hope. Hope that Robert is okay, that he's found people who love him the way he deserved to be loved all along, that he's happy in a way he could never be with us. And you know what? If you've stayed with me through this whole long, painful story, I'm grateful. I know this wasn't easy to listen to. It's not a story with a happy ending. It's not a story where the mother realizes her mistake, and the son comes home and everything is forgiven, and they all live happily ever after. This is a story about consequences, about living with the weight of your choices, about understanding too late what really mattered. If this story made you think about your own relationships, your own family dynamics, your own choices, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you think someone else needs to hear this story, someone who might be making the same mistakes I made, please share it. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about real people trying to navigate this complicated, messy, beautiful, painful thing we call family. Because we all mess up. We all make mistakes. But maybe by sharing our stories, by being honest about our failures, we can help each other do better. Be better. I don't know if Robert will ever see this. Marcus doesn't give me information about Robert's online presence or whether he ever watches videos like this. For all I know, he'll never know I told this story. But I hope, God, I hope, that if he does see it, he understands why I'm sharing it. Not to pressure him, not to guilt him, not to try to manipulate him into coming back. I'm sharing it because his story matters. Because what happened to him shouldn't happen to anyone else. Because somewhere out there, there might be another quiet, generous person who needs to hear that they matter, that they deserve better, that walking away is sometimes the bravest, strongest thing they can do. Robert, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I will never stop being sorry. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. I'm grateful that you're happy. And I love you. I love you not because of what you gave us, but because of who you are. The kind, thoughtful, brilliant man you always were, underneath all the weight we piled on you. I hope you're surrounded by people who see you, who value you, who would never dream of taking advantage of your generous heart. I hope you found the family you deserved, whether that's friends or a partner or children of your own, or just a community of people who appreciate you. I hope you're happy. That's all I want anymore. Just for you to be happy. And to everyone else watching. Learn from my mistakes. See the quiet people in your life. Value them. Protect them. Love them without conditions. Don't wait until they're gone to realize what you had. Family isn't about who you share blood with. It's about who you choose to honor, to cherish, to protect. It's about showing up for people in ways that build them up instead of tearing them down. It's never too late to change, to do better, to be better. But sometimes it is too late to fix what you've broken, and you have to live with that. I'm living with it, every day, for the rest of my life. But if my story helps even one person make a different choice, helps even one Robert out there feel seen and valued, helps even one family avoid the pain we caused, then maybe this confession means something. Maybe it matters that I finally told the truth. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring enough about an old woman's regrets to stick with me through this whole painful story. If you learned something from it, if it touched you, if it made you think, please let me know in the comments, and please share this story. You never know who might need to hear it. Take care of yourselves, and more importantly, take care of the quiet, generous people in your lives. Tell them they matter. Show them they're seen. Love them while you still can, because sometimes you only get one chance, and I missed mine.